The story of Lasseter's Reef is one of Australia's most captivating and enduring legends. It tells the tale of Harold Bell Lasseter, a prospector who claimed to have discovered a gold-rich quartz reef in the late 19th century, only to lose it in the vast deserts of Central Australia. Despite numerous expeditions and a century of treasure hunters searching for the legendary reef, it has never been definitively found, at least not officially. There is speculation that Lasseter's Reef may have already been discovered by others, but without anyone realising it was the same fabled deposit. To understand this possibility, we must explore the geological history of the Northern Territory and the orogenic events that created the gold deposits in the region. In 1897, Harold Lasseter claimed to have found an enormous gold reef somewhere in the outback, west of Alice Springs. According to Lasseter, the reef was rich with gold, embedded in quartz veins that stretched for miles. However, after losing his supplies and being stranded in the desert, Lasseter barely survived, leaving the location of the reef unmarked. For decades, Lasseter kept his secret, but in the late 1920s, he began to seek investors to help rediscover the gold deposit. In 1930, a well-funded expedition was launched. Lasseter's 1930 expedition to rediscover his fabled gold reef was one of the most ambitious and well-funded treasure hunts in Australian history, but it ended in failure and tragedy. This expedition, organised by the Central Australian Gold Exploration Company, also known as CAGE, set out to locate the vast gold deposit Lasseter claimed to have found decades earlier, and its story is one of miscommunication, distrust and the harsh realities of the Australian outback. The company secured modern equipment, vehicles and even an airplane to assist in the search. CAGE had high hopes that Lasseter's Reef would lead to untold riches and aimed to use the latest technology to find and exploit the gold. In July of 1930, the expedition set out from Alice Springs with great fanfare. Lasseter, claiming to know the way to the reef, was expected to guide the group westward toward the border of the Northern Territory and Western Australia. The team had high hopes and morale was initially strong as they travelled into the desert with a mixture of camels, vehicles and air support. However, the expedition faced challenges almost immediately. The rough desert terrain proved too much for the motor vehicles, which frequently broke down. The conditions in the outback were harsher than anticipated, and the expedition's reliance on technology in a region where traditional bushcraft might have been more effective led to delays and frustrations. One of the critical problems that emerged early in the expedition was Lasseter's inability to provide clear and consistent directions to the gold reef. His memory of the region seemed unreliable and the vast featureless desert made navigation exceedingly difficult. Lasseter gave the expedition contradictory instructions, claiming one moment that he recognised the landscape and the next that they had to travel further west. As the days stretched on, it became apparent to Blakeley and other members of the team that Lasseter didn't have a clear idea of where the reef was located. Tensions grew between Blakeley, the leader of the expedition, and Lasseter. Blakeley, a seasoned bushman who was initially skeptical of Lasseter's story, began to lose patience, accusing Lasseter of misleading the group. Lasseter, in turn, grew increasingly defensive, maintaining that the reef existed and that they were getting close, even as the group wandered further into the desert with no sign of gold. After several weeks of fruitless searching, the expedition began to disintegrate. The motor vehicles were breaking down more frequently, supplies were running low, and the harsh desert conditions were taking their toll on the men and the animals. At this point, morale among the group was at an all-time low, and the leadership of the expedition was losing faith in Lasseter's ability to guide them to the reef. In September of 1930, Fred Blakeley made the decision to abandon the search. Convinced that Lasseter had no idea where the reef was located, Blakeley and most of the team turned back, returning to Alice Springs. However, Lasseter refused to give up. He decided to press on into the desert with a small party and a few camels. Lasseter was eventually left completely alone when his remaining companions abandoned the search. Now alone in one of the most remote and unforgiving parts of the Australian outback, Lasseter continued his search for the reef. According to his diary, which was later recovered, he claimed to have found the reef once again, but without the tools or resources to exploit it. He noted that the gold was as rich as he had remembered, but he lacked the means to take advantage of his discovery. Desperate and running out of supplies, Lasseter's health deteriorated rapidly, and he died alone in the desert, sometime in early 1931. After Lasseter failed to return, the expedition backpackers grew concerned, and a search party was sent out to find him. The search party, led by bushman Bob Buck, eventually located Lasseter's body in a remote part of the desert. His diary, found beside his body, contained some cryptic entries about rediscovering the reef and his final days in the desert. Lasseter was buried near where his body was found, but his diary only deepened the mystery of the reef. Although he wrote that he had rediscovered the gold, his vague descriptions and lack of coordinates left treasure hunters with little concrete information. The failure of the 1930 expedition and Lasseter's death did not end the legend of the reef. Instead, it further fueled speculation and fascination. Many have since speculated that Lasseter may have been confused, either by the harsh desert conditions or his memory, and that he never actually found the reef again. Others believe that the reef exists, but in a different location than Lasseter claimed. It's worth noting that Lasseter was not an experienced prospector or miner, and it's quite possible that he could have been confused by a quartz vein filled with chalcopyrite or pyrite or another similar looking mineral. His limited experience with mineral identification, combined with the stress of survival in a remote outback, may have led him to believe he had discovered a rich gold reef, when in reality it's possible he found a quartz vein filled with a sulfide mineral. This possibility adds another layer to the mystery of Lasseter's reef. If the reef was a misidentified pyrite deposit, it would explain why so many subsequent expeditions have failed to find the legendary gold. While most expeditions have focused on the western deserts of the Northern Territory, some modern researchers believe Lasseter's reef could lie further east, possibly in the more geologically favourable areas of Central or Eastern Northern Territory. These regions, shaped by significant orogenic events, are more likely to host the types of gold deposits Lasseter described. The geology of the Arunta orogenic belt and McDonald Ranges, in particular, suggests that these areas could be prime candidates for the elusive reef. The Central Northern Territory has seen intense tectonic activity over hundreds of millions of years, creating the conditions for gold-bearing quartz veins to form. Some experts suggest that Lasseter may have intentionally or unintentionally misled others about the location of the reef, either to protect his discovery or due to confusion in a vast and featureless desert landscape. One intriguing possibility is that Lasseter's reef has already been discovered, but it wasn't recognised as the legendary deposit he described. There are several reasons why this could be the case. Lasseter's directions were famously vague, and the vast expanse of the Australian outback made it easy to misidentify landmarks. Over time, multiple gold deposits have been found in Central Australia, and it's possible that one of these deposits is the same as Lasseter's, but without the fanfare or realisation that matched his description. Central and Western Northern Territory are home to several well-known goldfields, such as the Tanami Desert and the Altunga Goldfield. These areas have produced significant amounts of gold over the years, often from quartz veins similar to those Lasseter described. It's conceivable that one of these deposits, particularly a smaller or less prominent one, might match the location of Lasseter's reef, but was simply not connected to his legend. The types of gold-bearing quartz veins Lasseter described are common in regions affected by major orogenies like the Strangways orogeny and the Alice Springs orogeny. If Lasseter's reef is located within these regions, it could have been mined in the early days of Australian gold prospecting without anyone realising its connection to Lasseter's story. Gold mineralisation occurs in regions affected by tectonic activity, where faults and fractures in the Earth's crust allow hydrothermal fluids to circulate. These fluids deposit gold in quartz veins, which are then exposed through erosion or mining activity. The most promising orogenies for gold deposition in the Northern Territory are the Strangways orogeny and the Alice Springs orogeny, both of which created favourable conditions for gold-bearing quartz veins. The Strangways orogeny occurred 1.74 billion years ago, and it is one of the most important orogenies for understanding gold mineralisation in the Northern Territory. It affected the Arunta orogenic belt, creating large-scale deformation and faulting that allowed for hydrothermal fluid circulation. This orogeny is responsible for the formation of quartz veins that host gold deposits. The Strangways orogeny primarily affected the Aileron province within the Arunta belt, which stretches across Central Northern Territory. The faulting and hydrothermal activity created during the Strangways orogeny provided ideal conditions for gold deposits. These structures could easily match Lasseter's description of the gold-rich reef. If Lasseter's reef exists, it's likely associated with quartz veins formed during the Strangways orogeny, making the Arunta belt a promising location for the reef. The region's rich geological history makes it highly plausible that a gold reef like Lasseter's could be hidden in this area. The Alice Springs orogeny occurred between 450 to 300 million years ago. It had a significant impact on Central Australia, particularly the McDonald Ranges. During this orogeny, older faults were reactivated, creating new pathways for hydrothermal fluids and allowing gold-bearing veins to form or be further concentrated. If Lasseter's reef lies within the McDonald Ranges, The Alice Springs orogeny could have exposed the gold-bearing quartz veins that Lasseter described. The reactivation of fault zones during this orogeny makes it a strong candidate for the location of the reef. Over the years, Central and Eastern Northern Territory has seen significant gold discoveries, many of which bear similarities to Lasseter's descriptions. The Tanami Desert goldfields, for example, are located in a region affected by the same tectonic processes that created gold-bearing structures across the Northern Territory. Likewise, the Altunga goldfield, located east of Alice Springs, has produced gold from quartz veins similar to those Lasseter described. It is possible that one of these deposits, or a smaller, lesser-known goldfield, matches the characteristics of Lasseter's reef but was simply not recognised as such. Given the vague nature of Lasseter's direction and the challenges of navigating the outback, it's plausible that the reef was found and mined without anyone realising its connection to the legend. The legend of Lasseter's reef continues to intrigue adventurers and geologists alike. While most searchers have focused on the western deserts, the geology of Central and Eastern Northern Territory, particularly regions affected by the Strangways orogeny and the Alice Springs orogeny, suggests that these areas are much more likely to host the gold deposit Lasseter described. Whether the reef has already been discovered and simply misidentified, or remains hidden beneath the surface of the Arunta orogenic belt or McDonnell Ranges, the mystery endures. With the geological potential of these regions and the historical goldfields nearby, Lasseter's reef may indeed exist, and perhaps, without knowing it, someone has already mined the legendary gold. So what do you think? Does Lasseter's reef really exist, or is it just another fable in the rich history of Australian gold prospecting? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Are you interested in animals? I've just started a second channel called Paleozoology that discusses extinct and extant animals with a current focus on the megafauna that once dominated and roamed Australia. I'd love to have you along for the journey as more videos are released. You can find a link to this channel in the description and in the pinned comment in the comment section. Before I end this video, I'd like to give a big shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you so much to everyone that helps to support this channel.